what's up, everybody? This is Case Study QB, and we are the political junkies. Let me stop sharing that for now. What's going on? Got the music going. Hey, back at it again. You know, it's been a couple weeks. Last week was Father's Day. That was the week we were really supposed to have a show, but because it was Father's Day, we took a break. But I said, let's fit one in right now this Sunday before I go on vacation next week. So just to let everybody know who watches and looks out for the clips on Twitter, that I'm going to be out starting Tuesday next week. So I'm going to be taking a break, but I look forward to coming back in. I'll probably try to sneak in a clip or two. Just don't tell my wife. Don't tell the wife. I'm going to try to sneak it in there. But let me let my people say what's up. Let me go around the horn. Johnny, what's going on, buddy?
What's up? What's up, man? It's good to be back.
Yeah. Day.
Hey, everybody. Missed y'all. Excited to chat today.
Yeah, David, what's going on?
Hello. I rushed home from the Pride Festival and in Denver, and it had so much fun. I was out there bouncing with Big Frida. And
nice.
Yes, and now we get to talk politics, nice. So I'm excited.
Nice. Kimberly's in the chat. Let me know. Give me the thumbs up when you're good, buddy. Let me give a shout out to the chat. Holly Horns in the building. The Jam on 93 is in the building. Much love to see you. And yes, I am got on my Working Stripe Back t-shirt. And I'll just show real quick the pictures that I went and I met up with. Here it is. I met up with Brianna Joy Gray, and I was able to meet up with Chris Hedges, which was really cool. Let me see if I can bring these pictures up. Boom. All right. So that's the next day. They had another event where I saw Bree was at. Here she is with Katie Helper. And I was able to meet Katie Helper, but she was not at the Working Strike Back. This is the Working Strike Back here. Boom. I was able to meet up with Chris Hedges and Brianna Joy Gray. So I thought that was really cool. Let me get my buddy Kimberly's. And Kimberly, give me the thumbs up. I don't want to bring you in prematurely, but give me the thumbs up. And then, oh, there we go. All right. Kimberly is in the building. What's up, Kimberly? I know you're on mute right now, so you could take yourself off mute.
Hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, buddy. Got a lot to talk about, so I hope y'all are going to be here for the long haul. We got a lot to catch up on, and going to be discussing a lot of things. Kimberly, if you want to give us the rundown, how you doing, buddy? Everything good with you?
Yeah, I'm doing decent.
Good. I was telling my man Day that we saw him in the Healing Us. I want to give the Healing Us documentary a shout out. Definitely go see that. It's a documentary about Medicare for All, and it's a documentary about the various stories. Amy Vallela's in it, and Scott. What's his last name, Johnny?
Denoyer.
Yeah, Scott Denoyer's in it as well,
Danny
talking about
Strong.
how unfortunately his son passed away just because he couldn't pay $20, right? It's not even that he couldn't pay the $20. They told him, hey, you owe $20. And then he said, okay, I got the money to pay it. And they said, oh, but it already lapsed. So you got to wait till next month. Yeah.
His medication cost hundreds of dollars that he couldn't afford without being on the insurance. So they instead of letting him pay it and then letting him get his medication, he had to go without his antipsychotic medication, which we know the side effect of withdrawal to that is SI, and he followed through, and it's a really devastating story. And then Day was in it, right?
Yeah, Day. I saw Day. Yeah. He made a little appearance in it that he didn't even know it was in there. So definitely, everyone who's watching this, if you can, go look up Healing Us, the documentary, and check it out. So let's get to the story. So we heard about, the billionaires that went into the submarine. They went down. They tried to go look at the Titanic, and the submarine just imploded. So the point I wanted to point it out, me personally, when anybody passes away, to a certain extent, you want to give reference, except for Henry Kissinger. For the love of God, kid, the man just died. He's like 100 years old.
Oh, bad.
And I mean, is it wrong for me to say that? I don't know. For the love of God, Henry Kissinger, it makes me lose hope in karma. Because like, if there was ever the poster child, but if you do bad things will happen to you. Like Henry Kissinger is still alive. Nah, but anyway, I know everybody's like, I believe that one alone. Look at that. All right, let me bring up this clip. So this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about, right? So we see the Ocean Gate. This is the Titanic picture, and this is just, it says today's video headline. That's what it says at the top of this video, this picture here. But I looked up a story on, there's nearly 30 children reported missing in Cleveland during the first 2 weeks of May. First of all, I want to ask the panel, how many people heard about this? Put your hands up if you heard about this. Johnny didn't hear about it. David didn't hear about it. Kimberly, did you hear about this? Okay, nobody heard about 30 children being missing in the span of 2 weeks. It's like a crazy child trafficking type of situation. The cops was like, we don't know what's going on. But you hear about billionaires, like there was a search for billionaires for like a couple of days. I forget how many exact days it was, like the last 72 hours or whatever it is. And it's absolutely nuts. Here's another a clip that I saw, not a clip, but a meme that I saw, because this is talking about another story of immigrants was trying to go to, I forget if it was Greece, and their boat went under. And from what I understand, the government was actually tracking the boat, and they knew when the motor failed, and that thing, it went under, and nobody helped. So let me go to my panel. David, let me go to you first, buddy.
Yeah, that's what I was going to reference. Is the refugee situation, and I was like, what I think is really interesting. I'm not saying that. It's sad when anybody dies. I will say that. But the amount of taxpayer resources that went into rescuing these really, really rich people, and then when the rest of us need something, we don't have money for it. And so then we think about people, hundreds of people who are in the same situation, who would probably be actually more easily rescued than people who are 13,000 feet at the bottom of the ocean. We can't do anything for them. And so I was like, it just always seems to be the same contradiction, the same pattern. There's always money available for the people in the 0.1% or 1%, but there's never any money for the rest of us.
Terrible. Dave, go ahead, Dave.
So, coincidentally, I actually had just watched Titanic the night before, because it's my favorite movie, for people who don't know. And so I was a little freaked out. But all that to say, of course, like David said, it's really sad. But I thought what was interesting was, of course, the clear contrast in class on display. I thought about people who spent $250,000 to a billionaire's, like, a cup of coffee. But then you have these people paying $5,000 to $8,000 to get on this boat and the chance of freedom, which was probably, all that they had. And I was talking to a friend about it, and I said, I think, unfortunately, beyond the fact that people are just amazed by salaciousness, because I was like, honestly, 700 people going down is also a crazy story. I think is that newscasters didn't, once it was migrants or immigrants, it makes it political. And unfortunately, we are so partisan that people find it easier to talk about these billionaires so they don't have to, quote unquote, bring politics into it, versus people who are trying to flee to a better life, because then you have to talk about what contributed to these people having this situation. And unfortunately, that's going to talk about our foreign policy, that's going to talk about corrupt governments, etc. And that's not what they're willing to do.
Yeah, 100%. It's absolutely crazy. Go ahead, Johnny.
Well, so, I kind of take a somewhat callous approach to this whole thing, regardless of social status. When people put them, and I tweeted out about this, I said, because I'll just read it. It's an unfortunate society we live in, that people would put themselves at risk, and as such put others at risk just for their sense of entitlement. I've tried to find sympathy for them as humans, but can't bring myself to it regardless of their social status. It was just dumb. And I've kind of felt this way when it comes to other, it doesn't matter how much it costs them to go down and do this. It's, people who think it's okay to put themselves at risk and then use resources that then tend to put those people at risk to save them, because they want adventure, and they want, to me, there should be a public waiver, dude, for some things. You're going to go and do something that's that stupid, then you're saying, hey, I'm taking my life in my own hands, and that's what chance I want to take. It's interesting that, we have these issues with people committing suicide, and we want to put them in a mental institution because they want to hurt themselves. But people who want to jump out of a perfectly good airplane, we say that's excitement. People who want to dive to the bottom of the ocean and get crushed, oh, it's unfortunate. They thought it was going to work. I mean, it's to me, it's very difficult to feel sorry for them, especially when, considering their status and the fact that they didn't really do any homework under this particular instance. I mean, there was all these red flags, and there was another son and father team that had turned down their seats because the son and a friend started investigating and saying, hey, dude, I don't think this is a good idea. His friend.
Wow.
Yeah. His friend was warning him. I saw it this morning. His friend was warning him and saying, hey, dude, I don't think it's a good idea that you go down. And they started doing research on the sub. And then he talked his father into saying, no, I appreciate the gift, because he loved the Titanic too, right? He loved the whole story and history of it. And he said, I appreciate the gift, but I don't want to take the risk. And then the other father and son took their seats. So it's unfortunate, but they had enough sense to say, this isn't a good idea. Yeah. So anyway, yeah.
Let me go back today, and then I'm going to go to Kimberly next.
Yeah, I think for me, I take a different approach than Johnny, just because I do believe inherent in almost everything that we do as people, there is a level of risk. And of course, there's lower levels of risk and higher levels of risk. But I think, for example, like flying in an airplane, while in the abstract is a very risky behavior, we have such regulations in place to ensure that, because we can't afford to have accidents, they have a really high standard of ethics and regulations to hopefully avoid any plane crashes. And to me, I think what I have such an issue with in this instance, while yes, I wish in a perfect world these people had researched it better, I think there was potentially a good faith assumption that any person operating such a business would be, regulated to some degree, that there was safety regulations. And unfortunately, when we kind of delve deeper and deeper into the CEO and the things that they were doing, like, they were a menace. I mean, it's a cruel sense of irony that they also perished with them. But it's like, I don't know. I guess I struggle. Like you said, even with skydiving, I was like, skydiving, they work really hard to make it as safe as possible. I have friends that skydive. It's a no for me. But, to the people that do it, big ups. And so, yeah, I don't know. I feel like there are certain things that if somebody just jumped out of an airplane with no parachute, I don't know what to tell you. But, if you were thinking that it was supposed to be a certain way because it's a business, I think that we should make sure there are certain safeguards in place so that people can be safe. But that's just
there was a time I wanted to skydive too, but then got married, had children. I'm like, at this point, I'm living for my children, so I can't take any crazy risks with my life. So goodbye to that one. Kimberly, what do you think, buddy?
I would just say, as far as like, some of these billionaires doing research on this, I just feel like, do you need to do research? The moment you've seen what that stuff looked like, you should have known, wait a minute, this is not a real submarine. Like, I don't think you need to do research. You should, right? Technically, if you're going to do something this dangerous, but just looking at the submarine. And this is another thing, is that we're always taught about the rich, is that they're so smart. They're always making the smartest decisions. That's why, they've earned all this money. When the truth is that just like everybody else, there's, smart rich people and dumb rich people. The reason they're rich is because most of the time they got lucky. Has nothing to do with their intelligence. And that's why, we get stories like this where somebody would pay $250,000 to essentially kill themselves, because apparently it wasn't obvious that they were sitting in a metal trash can.
A metal trash can, yep. It's crazy. All right, let's go on to the next clip. Now, I just want to give a shout out to everybody in the chat. The chat is chatting. Much love to you, PJ Hallie. Bad Cookies is in the building. Mastermind Hours in the building. And let's see who else is down here. Sunny J just came up in the chat. Much love to you, y'all. All right. So let's get a little spicy. Let's get to the spicy. I just posted this clip yesterday, and it's up to 47,000 views already. And when y'all watch it, y'all gonna know why it got this many views. All right, let me go to it now. Boom. Oh, I gotta bring it up here. All right, boom. All right.
It's
By the way, can you all hear?
the people who voted for Jill Stein, just Jill Stein.
Y'all can hear. Okay, let me start it over. Blow it up. Boom.
If the people who voted for Jill Stein, just Jill Stein, in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania had voted for Hillary instead, Donald Trump would have never become president. That's it, right? And so, I'm sure there's a lot of Cornel West fans out there. You live in a swing state, you vote for Cornel West, you're helping Trump become president. That's it. And you can say, oh, well, it's Joe Biden's fault. He did this or that. No. It's your decision. You get to decide whether you want to help Donald Trump become president or you don't. And if you want to help him, then you should vote for Cornel West, or you should vote for Joe Manchin and his no labels ticket, or you can vote for, RFK Jr. if he decides to run third party. But if you don't want to help Trump become president, you got to vote for Joe Biden. That's it. Very simple. Now, I think messaging to voters who might actually make this decision is probably a little different, I would say, because
No, chastising works.
I do think you need to explain why these candidates would not be good candidates for president. I really do, because I think we could get tripped up in that, because I think if you are one of these voters and you hear a bunch of people yelling at you to vote for Joe Biden and because you have to, I don't think it's going to be very effective. And I think you have to say why RFK Jr. is not a good choice, why Cornel West is not a good choice, why Joe Manchin, or whoever it may be, is not a good choice. So that is something that I think Democrats are going to have to figure out in the next year. Final.
All right. So let me go. Let's go to Dave first.
First of all, what planet does this man live on? Because what they really need to focus on is convincing us why Joe Biden is a good enough candidate to want to even care about at this point, because he's consistently failed us on all the major margins that people act as if progressives or people on the left are asking for some outrageous policies. We're out here saying police abolition, which there are pieces of there who are, and that's great, but we recognize that's politically risky. We are asking for things that most Americans, despite their political ideology, agree on. Medicare for all, legalization of marijuana, free paternity leave, free pay, all the different things like that. And yet they still tell us we can't do that for you all, and then get upset that we don't show up. Hillary Clinton chose not to campaign in major states. I'm sorry, you are not a queen. You don't get to do that. And more importantly, this is the thing that pisses me off the most. Using his logic, if all the people who voted for Gary Johnson voted for Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton would have still lost the election.
Yeah.
How pretentious is that? That, because I didn't vote for Jill Stein, I'm going to automatically vote for Hillary? They could have just stayed home.
Yeah. 100%. Kimberly.
Yeah, I always find it interesting when they bring up this Hillary point of folks stole votes from Hillary, when one could also say, well, wait a minute, Hillary was the main voice who was talking to corporations, the media corporations, and telling them to cover Trump around the clock because she wanted that to be her opponent. The problem is that the woman was so arrogant that she couldn't see herself losing. But obviously she did lose. I just think, the Democrats have completely given up on convincing people, delivering anything. I don't think that that's ever in their program. They don't do politics of that kind. They make speeches about FDR, but they don't want to do any of those kind of politics that will actually benefit someone that's not already sitting in the 1%. So it isn't surprising to me. I just think we as Americans need to realize that every time that Democratic folks talk this way, what they're doing is threatening you, right? They never talk about how many times they've helped support Trump and help support Trump donors and help support Trump policies, right? Immediately as soon as Biden loses, which is usually going to be due to all the bad policies he's put through, losing part of his base, because we know the Democratic base is bigger than the Republican base, right? But a lot of them don't show up, so the Democrats lose. And all of this is going to get put on folks who didn't want to vote for a strike-breaking president, right? It is your fault that Joe Biden won't get across the finish line because your only job as a citizen is to support people like Joe Biden who are going to keep the fascists away, even if once you elect Joe Biden, he's going to be doing compromises with them, which will then be sold as, intelligent approach, even though throughout the primaries, they proclaimed that this evil was so large that you had to abandon all morality to vote for Joe Biden. People need to just respond to this as what it is. It's a threat.
Yeah. I like what somebody put in the reply to that clip. They said, every vote for Joe Biden is a vote that doesn't go to Cornel West. That's going to cause Trump to win. So before I go to David, I just want to play this clip.
If you want to pull the party, the major party that is closest to the way you're thinking, to what you're thinking, you must show them that you're capable of not voting for them. If you don't show them you're capable of not voting for them, they don't have to listen to you. I promise you that. I worked within the Democratic Party. I didn't listen or have to listen to anything on the left while I was working in the Democratic Party, because the left had nowhere to go. If you want to pull the party,
so let's listen to Lawrence O'Donnell. Let's take his cue. Let's take his lessons and take it to heart. Go ahead, David.
I don't want to listen to those people, like the illusion of choice between this like two-party oligarchy, whatever it is. But I was like, I'm just tired of having to pick between the lesser of two evils. And I was like, especially if we are a nation of individual liberties, one person, one vote, then we need to be also getting rid of the Electoral College as well. And so, like, I also think you can even expand it further about, like, it's important to note why whoever your political opposition is, per se, is a bad candidate. Then we should let them debate one another so we can see them fighting each other with their verbal spars and policies. Like, that's what we should be doing. Letting these people present their case to the American people, instead of giving us this illusion of choice between Trump and Biden.
No, 100%. I think I'm going to go to Johnny, and then we're going to go back to Day. Go ahead, Johnny.
Yeah, so this is a pretty touchy subject for me, because I think in all these general strikes and protests and all these things, that the number one demand that we should be seeking on the other side is election and voting reforms that bring about a fair and functioning democracy that we don't currently have, right? So that includes things like eliminating the Electoral College, having things like a majority vote, a majority result voting system like ranked choice voting or star voting. That's what I prefer. And, having open primaries. Like Minnesota is pretty good. I've told people this. It has, same-day registration, paper scannable ballots, like all those things, but we also have the plurality, right? We don't have the majority runoff system, and that is problematic, okay? We even have a public primary outside of the party primary system that if you don't get selected as the candidate from the party, you can go on to the August primary, a public voting primary, and just take it to the voters, right? I mean, it's still difficult because they have the party backing, but you can have that system, but it's still a plurality. So I was doing some math with somebody who was talking about this, because we're talking about organizing a national voting and election reform organization to start helping states do what needs to be done in their states to get what we need, right? And we started calculating that a lot of these candidates have won by 37%, which means, 63% or 60, what is that right? 63% of the population did not want this candidate, but they won. Whether it's in a primary in their own party, like Trump, he averaged 25, 30%, and he kept just taking down state after state. 70% plus of the people did not want him as the candidate, but he got shoved down the Republican side's throat, right? And then with that became the popularity. So this is a huge problem. Now, I agree that voters don't really give a crap anymore. After what Biden has done, he was supposed to be better than Trump. Remember, Trump was so horrible. Oh my God, I can't believe Trump. Oh, Trump. And then what does Biden do? Dog shit. I mean, nothing. he breaks every promise. He breaks the union. Kimberly, you're awesome. You know what's going on, man. I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, and nobody wants to vote for that. Those Greens and those people who voted for Jill Stein, I was one of them, would never have voted for Hillary Clinton. Thank you. I would never vote for Joe Biden. I did not vote for him. Whether I live in a swing state or not, you do not own my vote. I'm not giving it to you. I will vote for some obscure dude or woman on the presidential side if I choose to fill that in. But a lot of people will tell you if the two top choices are something and there's no third alternative that they like, they'll just leave it blank and then vote down ballot. Right? Where things matter to them, state, local races, right? And what's happening in Congress and the presidency, it seems doesn't matter who's in office because they're all one big party working together with different social aspects to entrap voters, right? You got the right Christo fascist, evangelical side, going on their rants, and then you have the liberal side going on their rants. And now they're gonna, we're gonna codify Roe if you vote for us. Oh my God, we had 50 years to do it, but we didn't do it. But if you vote for us this time, please, we promise, give us your money and vote for us. The Democrats, we got your back. No, they had 2 years to do it. They saw it coming and they did nothing. So
not only recently the 2 years, but also back when Obama was running for office. Go ahead, Johnny.
Well, how do they expect anybody to believe any of this crap? Nobody I know is going to vote for a Democrat or Republican unless, in the off chance that some Democrat makes it through over Biden. But we just saw Marianne Williamson post today that the young Democrats or some college Democrats got notice that they weren't to support any other candidates but Joe Biden. In the college, right? So this is the game they're playing. I will not be voting for any of that corruption. And we'll see what other candidates emerge in the green or independent sphere that I may be choosing. We're a year out. I've reached out to candidates, and if I don't get a response from their volunteer form, then that tells me they're not yet serious, right? Cornel West has not gotten back to me. Marianne Williamson has not gotten back to me. There are people, that's one of my testing grounds for these candidates to find out what kind of structure they have as
that's
a
good
candidate,
point.
So anyway, I think it's bullshit to be putting this off. And also, if you even work in the system now, a plurality, Jesse Ventura won this was part of our conversation. He won with 37% because, this guy was saying, oh, an independent can win. It's what about Jesse Ventura? And I said, he was a fluke. And not to mention, he didn't win with the majority. So, if you want to use the plurality system, then you could say, hey, in our state or whatever, a president can actually win 37, 38% on a third party under these conditions. That is true. So the bullshit that they're saying it's impossible, he's taking votes away. No, Joe Biden is taking votes away from progressives. That's what's happening.
Yeah, 100%. Let me go today.
Yeah, so I want to, because I know I have friends that love Joe Biden, et cetera. So I want to add some my own nuance to the conversation. So I always tell them it's not as if Joe Biden literally did nothing. I know I speak hyperbolically, but I always say this. If I have the option in a primary to vote for somebody that I only agree with 40% overall, and 90% of that 40% is just on social policy, that's a problem for me. Because at the end of the day, they lack the economic policy that's actually going to stop, in my opinion, stop a lot of the culture war and social fighting. So I look at it like we're not asking these people to be 100% in alignment with us, because if I was, I would just be running. It'd be me. But I'm not. I'm asking you at least give me 70 to 75%. Because if a candidate is like 80 to 85% with the left, and then we're fighting over the 15%, then I would have the argument like, okay, you guys are doing the most. Like, have some nuance. We should be able to show up for this candidate. But that's not what they're offering in Joe Biden. And so it really frustrates me that we get to this point. But I wanted to ask the question, do you really think that that fear would work, given that we've seen what happened with Gore and we saw what happened with Hillary, and they did actually lose? Do you actually think the Democrats care about losing if that means they don't have to be in power, so they're not expected to do anything, and they're able to fundraise like crazy when they're in the minority. So in my opinion, yes, there are social policies that could impact them that they might not like, but when you're wealthy, you are isolated via your class often from the impacts of that. And more importantly, a lot of the economic policy being passed is beneficial to both Democratic and Republican wealthy people. So I wanted to know, do you guys think that they actually care about losing anymore?
Yeah, I don't think they care about losing. We even when Bernie was on the crux of winning, we heard from various part of the Democrats that if Bernie Sanders was the nominee, they would not be voting for Bernie. So they really don't care about a leftist or true leftist winning, or even themselves a Democrat like Biden winning, as long as losing, as long as an establishment is in that position of power, so that they make sure that we don't go outside of the bounds. For example, taxing the rich, what they're really supposed to be taxed, alleviating the relief from the poor through Medicare for all, or through even a public option. Biden hasn't said a peep about a public option. So, or forgiving student loan debt. I got a letter in the mail that they're ready to ramp that up. So I think as long as they have their corporatism in place and somebody in that position, they don't care. And it's very sad. Let me see. Kimberly, let me go to Kimberly.
I would just say, I think the Democrats, their biggest goal is basically to always block the left. They're okay with fascists. They're okay with the Nazis. They're okay with all these folks, because at the end of the day, even if they have separate social policy from you, they have the same economic policy. Meaning the rich people who are rich right now are going to stay rich, whether it's a fascist, a Nazi, it doesn't matter. These people are going to stay rich regardless. The only people who threaten that dynamic, is the left that's growing here. So I do think their main priority is keeping the left from ever gaining any political power where they can start enacting huge policy agendas. Another thing I will say is, for the most part, the Democrats don't care about losing because, their donors are still going to get their stuff. However, they do have a small left-wing insurgency that they've manually co-opted, but they're still afraid of. And so I do think they might actually care about winning this election, because if Joe Biden loses this election, right, they can't get another random Democrat in as a shoo-in, right? They're looking for somebody like Kamala to put in as a shoo-in, or somebody else, right? I mean, really, they would love to get rid of Kamala and put a better candidate in their body.
I think Gavin Newsom's who I see they're pushing a lot. Gavin Newsom, go ahead, Kimberly.
So I do think they might actually care about winning this election, because I think if Biden loses and Trump wins, that's going to put more fire again under the left. And that's not they've been very successful with co-opting the left. If Trump comes back in, people are going to start going back to, the radical politics of 2016 and basically wanting to get things done more quickly, which is not the situation that we see here. The left is kind of deflated. I do think that the establishment might care a little about keeping the current situation going, because it's very beneficial for them.
Yeah. Johnny wants to know what you think about DeSantis after DeSantis is nominated.
I think when I was looking at, I thought about DeSantis. I was saying that I believe the only way they'll switch out Biden is if it's DeSantis, because they believe, which to some valid reasons, that if Trump were the nominee, because he's so polarizing, that you could literally put a corpse up next to him and he could potentially lose. But with DeSantis, I think they've recognized with people like, what's my governor's name? Lord, I'm blanking out because I'm tired. Oh, Youngkin. And things like that, that it is possible to win if you are a polite psychopath, allegedly. I don't want to get in trouble with the legal. So I find it challenging, because essentially what they would do is swap them out, still not have a primary, and then just tell people, oh, it's because of some arcane rule that the governor of California automatically gets. Like, that's the type of crap they pull. And so I am a leftist who believes I'm not necessarily, you can't use the Democratic Party person. I do think right now, just given how things are structured, it's the only way you're either going to win or you're going to need to just accept that it's going to take a while on the third party route, I'm all for, like, if I lived in a swing state, I would happily vote green almost every election. But I do feel like there is a slight shift in the normal general public. Like, people, normies, most normies, I feel like, are like, it is kind of weird that, like, you know, there is a woman named Marianne, there is somebody like RFK Jr. There are people running. Why don't we get to hear from them? And even though they still listen to the people in charge that tell them, well, it can only be Biden, and they still succumb to the propaganda, they do have at least an inkling that this doesn't feel right. And I feel like if we could exploit that and continuously push on, I'm like, when you got normally actors come like James Vanderbeek and people like that getting on television, like, this is stupid. I think it's a sign that it's working. We just have to be able to channel that energy to the finish line. But the Democrats are waiting, like, come on. We're not crossing that line.
Yeah. Hashtag force the vote. Force the debate. That's the hashtag.
So I want to add one thing, Case, to the third party deal. Yeah. And here's the problem I see with third party growth is that they're always screwing around with the drop offs from the Dem or the Republican Party. They're looking for the drop offs instead of going out after the 50+% of non-eligible voters out there, or eligible voters who are non-voting. You know what I'm trying to say. The people who aren't politically engaged. They don't have any ground game. They're playing the media, the mainstream media game. They're like, oh, we need attention from the mainstream media in order for people to pay attention to us. You need to be out there knocking on doors and have a precinct strategy. That's it. You go around in local parks. You have, whether they're local candidates or whether they're your chapter, team members, going out, do some community work, man. Knock on people's doors, say, hey, what can we do to help you out? We're part of the Green Party and we want to help build our community out. And we're tired of whatever you can come up with different scripts and ways to engage your local community, go out, have panel discussions at the local libraries. There's all kinds of things you can do to engage your local community and build these chapters up in a mutual aid type aspect, right? Like you're engaging with these people instead of waiting for the drop-offs, the Dem exiters and all of that, because most of those people got a foot in and out, right? And they aren't necessarily going to completely commit to growing this other party, even though they say I went through this. I was never really a party person, and I had people who, left the Democratic Party. They were delegates. They were that deep in it, man. They were long timers. And then they decided they were going to help the Green Party. That lasted like a year. And then it was like, oh, this ain't going to happen. And there was no real strategy. It was all online. Everything is now online. Oh, we're going to do a Facebook group. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to share on Twitter. Somebody do a YouTube channel. And that's our activism.
Yeah. David, what you think?
Successful.
And you know what? I'll ask on behalf of Day before David goes. Do you feel, Johnny, this is for you. Do you feel it is too much of a hurdle to get those people in the habit of voting? So who are already voters and registered voters and engage in politics?
So I don't think it's a hurdle. I think it's a matter of, I'm losing interest in all this bullshit because we're not getting anything done. I've been doing this for 7 years and I've helped a number of different activist groups. And whenever it gets down to the actual implementation of strategy, everybody's great with vision. We all got the vision down, man. This is what we want things to look like. Yeah, let's do it. And then when it's the let's do it, here's the steps now, brother. Let's sit down. People are like, no, I don't want to do that work, or I don't have time for that work, or that ain't the way I want to go about doing it. And it's like, well, there's only one way to really go about doing this specific thing, or there's two options. Pick one, flip a coin, and let's move forward. And you never get to those steps. I've been dealing with it for a couple of years in different organizations I'm part of. As an operations specialist, it drives me absolutely nuts because for me, you tell me what you want to do, and then I reverse engineer all the steps that it takes to get you there. Right. And there's options and choices you can make along the way. And we can talk about those at the time, but you're always moving forward to that end goal eventually. And you know what your purpose is. And it's just like, it's just not happening. I mean, and the Green Party, they have their internal issues that I hope they're able to work out as they grow. But I've had my history with them here in the state. They're not even ranked as a minor party in my state because they focused solely on the Twin Cities. You know, as far as outward growth, they haven't focused on it. Like I said, building up their chapters, going out and doing community work on behalf of the party, like you should be doing as a party. And that's something you're working on because you're talking about the mutual aid political party, like building off of building community, right? And that's why, you know, so I think there's getting the people involved is just a matter of engaging with them. And they'll show up to vote if you're the person that's at their side, helping them and understanding them.
100%. Like, I know I did a YouTube with Sabby Sabs introducing, and we did a test run of the mutual aid party, and it was great. I was hoping that more people would sign up and try out the website, but I didn't get that much interaction. So that goes in what you're saying, Johnny, that there's a lot of people on the internet that's saying, hey, we need to see change. We want to see this and this. But then when it comes to you participating, and I'm hoping, you know, we're going to be fully launching, hopefully beginning next month, that we're going to need all hands on deck. And not only the mutual aid party, but also something that we don't talk about enough, I think, yet, is Cornel West. For those who wants to support the Green Party in Cornel West, you guys are going to have to, we hear about Dem exit and Dem enter. You guys are going to have to Green enter the Green Party, because we need, one, Cornel West didn't get the nomination right away. People are going to have to vote for him. They're going to have to be delegates for him. So we need people to enter the Green Party.
No,
go ahead,
that's
Johnny.
Not necessarily true. I mean,
and then I'm going to go to David, and then I'm going to go to Kimberly. But not. Oh, tell me what you're going to say, Johnny.
Well, I was just going to say they don't even have a presence here in Minnesota. So if he ends up on my general ballot, it's not going to be through a primary, because they're not going to have a primary on my ballot. They're not even ranked as a party, so there's not going to be a party primary ballot made for them. Like typically you can, you know, choose, you can walk in Minnesota, you could say, I want to vote Republican. They'll give you a Republican ballot. Or you can say, I want Green or Democrat, whatever, or Libertarian.
But you're talking about the primaries though, right, Johnny? Are you talking about the primaries?
So you said people are going to have to get involved, and they're going to have to vote, and for Cornel West to be, and really it's almost as if they're starting to coordinate him in the Green Party, because we've been seeing discussion about, you know, pushing him through. But nonetheless, even at that, the history, not everybody is going to be able to get engaged with the Green Party. Like I'm telling you, like myself, I live in rural Minnesota. there is no Green Party chapters within 100 miles of me. I will not be able to get engaged with the party other than, and you know, it's just, I mean,
it seems to be more complicated than
it isn't just, you know, start knocking on doors and tell people to vote for Cornel West, because if there isn't even a primary in your state, then what are you doing? If anything, all you're going to be doing is trying to help the Green Party build its status in the state it was founded, mind you, Minnesota.
Oh, wow. Okay. Let me go to David, and then I'm going to go to Kimberly next. Go ahead, David.
Yeah. So sometimes I think when resisting isn't working, then I think the next step sometimes is to infiltrate the system. And so I look at someone like Chris Rhodes, who you had on your show, who's running for Aurora City Council and did salting with his unions in order to get employees unionized in the workforce. And like, you're going into these organizations with the very intention to do this thing, knowing that your own like income could be affected. And so for example, I was like, there's a couple of examples that I have. I think about the people who invested in GameStop and drove that stock all the way up. And I was like, the people on Reddit in Wall Street Bets were playing that game and to intentionally affect the hedge funds. And so I think about like my day job is in tax and accounting. And so I was like, I literally help people set themselves up as corporations. Corporations are people, they are just not held accountable or taxed like regular W-2 workers. And so it's like, how can we reform the labor system by either all of us just owning our labor collectively and becoming our own corporations? But like, we have to do this, like we have to mass mobilize. And so I was like, sometimes I think it's easier to like infiltrate the existing system in order to do that. And so it's like we see it here in these like in economic ways, but now it's like, how can we infiltrate this with like the regular Democratic Party to push them further left? And I think that's part of the reason why I personally, at least, respect Marianne Williamson for running in the Democratic Party, and RFK Jr. I don't necessarily agree with him on much, but like that's to me, I feel like is what I see them doing. And I have respect for that.
I'll say this before I go to Kimberly, that I'm definitely I saw some people that were against the force the debate of them having a debate saying that they're Zionists but my answer to that would be, why let Biden off the hook? Why let him off the hook for not answering to why he did what he did to the unions, why he didn't have a public option, why he is, doing the war actions and giving 113 billion to Ukraine when you have people here. We're going to talk about, after Kimberly, we're going to go on to our next segment, but I want to talk about how there's a train recently fell in Kentucky in the river. We'll look at it.
Yellowstone.
Thank you so much. In the Yellowstone River, that can compromise the water there. We have people that just sleeping on the job. That's why there's no hope that he'll ever be president. But anyway, let me go to Kimberly, and then we'll go on to that segment. You went back on mute. I think you might have hit mute twice or something, but there you go.
All right, here we go. I would just like to add my 2 cents on Dave's original question. If it's too much of a hurdle to get people who are non-voters into the system, into political realm, and I'll say it's a hurdle, right? It's an extreme hurdle, in the sense that we're in a catch-22, right? Even though the Democratic mythology is that, the people who don't vote are people who are so privileged, right, that they just don't care. But every time we've done the studies on this, we know that the people who go out to vote are the people who have more money. The types of people who never go out to vote are the least privileged people, right? And when you think about it a little bit, it makes sense, right? Because the system has never been known to work for you. You talk to a lot of poor people, they solve things, one-on-one. They don't want to use the court system. They don't want to use the police. They don't believe in the political system. So, these are very nihilistic folks. And the problem is we need them though, right? Because these are also the people who would be most in support of an agenda that has, healthcare that's free at the point of use, all the types of things that we want to do, investments in schools, investments in neighborhoods. These are things that would be supported by somebody who tends not to be a non-voter, right? But it's very hard to pull that person out of their nihilism, partially because I think reality really affirms it, right? Like, I ran for office and I was knocking on doors telling people to vote for me, right? Because I had all these great ideas and I knew that I would fight for them. But does the person at the door know that I would fight for them? How many other politicians came to their door saying that they would fight for them, that they would get them, a better healthcare system, a better this, a better that? We're talking a group of people who've heard every word that you said multiple times throughout the years. And so how do you break that? I've come to the conclusion that I think you just need to be honest with folks and let them know that you're asking them to take a risk on you, that there is risk here, that you could be, a drone for the corporations, but that the risk is worth taking.
Yeah, no, 100%. Bad Cookies asks how they can get involved in the mutual aid party. So I just want to show this. Mutualaidparty.org is the website that, as of right now, the site hasn't launched there, but that's a landing page so that you can put your email address so that when we do launch, you'll get a email and how you can participate as well. And I see that Bad Cookies did it. Thank you so much, Bad Cookies, for signing up. And anybody else that wants to get active. This is one thing I'm happy about this Political Junkies and what we talk about. We talk about stories, but we also talk about how to take action and encouraging each other to take action. So that's why I love RBN, because they always talk about mutual aid. That's one of the things that they push, and that's how I came up with this idea. And all the other channels that are about doing something. The mutual aid, the Medicare for All marches happened. The first time it was in all the different cities, and then the next time it happened was in DC. And my thing is, let's get some action done. Even if you didn't agree with the people that might have headed or the people that spoke, we need to get some kind of action. And we're just sitting at home with Twitter fingers. So let's get out there and let's get to work. So I'm going to call this next segment, This is America. And you're going to find out why. It's going to be kind of like how back in the day we had a, what I call it, the lightning round. So I'm just going to go through some stories and we're going to call this segment, This is America. So the first thing is 3M agrees to pay $10 billion in forever chemicals. Let's play this.
3M has agreed to pay more than $10 billion to settle lawsuits over toxic chemicals in drinking water. The so-called forever chemicals is what we're talking about here, and they have been found in hundreds of household items. 3M has faced thousands of lawsuits alleging that it knew the chemicals could cause cancer and other health problems. The company says the settlement is not an admission of liability. 3M has
So there, that's one of the first segments, but I want to go to Day, who I missed you. I think you wanted to talk about something that Kimberly said. Go ahead, Day.
Oh yeah, sorry. One thing I liked that you said, Kim, is the fact that there is at some point a trust fall when it comes to voters and believing what people can do. And I think something that I've noticed on the left, there's certain candidates that I've watched run, and it's kind of like, you can tell these people genuinely want to, but people have become so nihilistic and negative that it's like you don't even want to take the chance anymore. It's like you had a bad relationship and now it's like all men are bad or all women are bad, etc. or anybody is bad. And I actually do think that's something that we need to be mindful of. We can't, in the pursuit of our justice, we can't then lose sight that hope is possible, that change is possible, because it eventually will happen only if we continue to go down that road. And I like that you mentioned, because it's one thing I like about, everyone knows my bias. I am a Marianne Williamson supporter in the primary, but I was like, is that she never pretends to be able to deliver more than she can. It's always constantly like, I don't want to go fight. I want to co-create. Like, I need you to be, your work doesn't stop by electing me as a president. And unfortunately, and a lot of times in politics, these politicians like Trump or even Obama, they run as if as long as we nominate them, everything is fine. I mean, even look at Joe Biden. Oh, we let Joe Biden win, we can go back to brunch. And that's not how politics works. Civic engagement has to be a part of our everyday life. Holding these people accountable from our local to our federal, all the way up to the presidency, has to be a part of our life. And that is a shift in our thinking as a nation. But I think we've been sedated for so long, because when we do that, change can happen. And people who want to hold the status quo where it is can't allow that. I mean, look at France. Like, they didn't even want to cover France's uprising properly, because they were like, if people in America start thinking that they can do this because we want to change the retirement age, what could happen? I mean, I even think about when Haiti became independent and free. Part of why they suppressed that in America is because they didn't want black people to think that they could revolt against the people who were having them as slave owners and do their own thing. So I really appreciate you bringing that up, Kimberly.
Yeah, 100%. I saw the footage from MSM covering the France uprising, saying, "Oh wow, they already have the lowest retirement, which is 60. They're pushing it to 64. It was 62. They're pushing it to 64. They're like, what? I don't know what they're complaining about. Oh, we got 67." And it's like, yeah, we should be pushing it down. Like we talked about it. We should be 40. That's what you said, Dave. Yeah, it should be 40. All right, let's go on to the next. This is America. The food necessary to keep babies alive, placed under lock and key, is the clearest proof I can think of that capitalism is a death cult and failed economic system. So here it is. Let me see, maybe I should zoom out. You can see how the baby food is locked behind because they're afraid of it getting stolen. But I'm sure there's countries that probably give it away for free because we understand the investment into the community. You could think of even a conservative argument would be you want to give away this food so that you don't have to, have dead babies that costs money for burial and all the other stuff. But just as a humanitarian, we should be able to give away, mass produce this as a public option. It doesn't have to be Inframeal, but maybe a public option that the government can create this type of baby powder and give it away for free. Why? It would have came in handy actually because they had a shortage of it over the pandemic. So it's absolutely crazy. So on to the next. This is America. This is showing when you heat water, its oxygen is released into the air. That's what happened in Texas. Now there are dead fish as far as the eye can see, and this is just the beginning. It's absolutely nuts. Absolutely nuts. All right, the next segment of This Is America. I retweeted, file this under capitalism, and this is More Perfect Union. A Starbucks worker recently uploaded a video showing how much food he's throwing away, and it fills up 3 shopping carts. So let me see if I can play this and blow it up.
POV, you're closing at Starbucks. All trash. Final damage.
All right, absolutely nuts. Only in America. And I've seen that personally so many times. I've seen that personally so many times where I've gone to a store and I see outside going in, I see a dumpster that you see homeless people going through. And I've even saw on YouTube or on Twitter, they had dumpsters that they will lock. They'll throw away the food that they're throwing out, and then they'll lock the dumpsters so that they can't have people go and get the food. So only in America. So the next one here. House Republicans want to ban free school meals. So it says 3/4 of the House GOP wants to eliminate a federal school meal program because it allows certain schools to provide free school lunches regardless of the individual eligibility of each student. Just sad. I remember during COVID, we were able to put money towards free lunches for everybody in the whole United States. And then they recently, under Joe Biden, they recently cut it off. I believe it was like in a couple months ago or recently. All right, here is the last. This is America. Cleanup continues after train carrying potentially contaminant derails into the Yellowstone River in Montana. And here's a picture of it. Montana. And this also goes to the infrastructure of America. So now they have all sorts of chemicals that's going into this Yellowstone fresh water that who knows if they use it for drinking water, who knows if they get fishing from it, fisheries. It is absolutely nuts. But let me go to David and tell me, David, what you think about all of this America segments. You can touch on anyone you want to.
Yeah, I was gonna say I had a few reactions. One, the 3M situation. I'd be curious if they decided to just settle and pay if they thought that like things were going to go the way of Chevron and their lawsuit and being told that they had to pay, which I don't think at this point that they still have. I used to be a general manager for Starbucks, and I also worked at Target as well with a Starbucks in it. And it's shocking the amount of garbage that is generated, and particularly food. Like it's awful. Like we at my Starbucks store, we were supposed to throw away food, but like I had a couple of employees, partners is what they call them, who lived in shelters, and so I would just send the food home with them. Starbucks didn't find out about it, but they might now, but that's their problem. And then also in Colorado, so again, like this is why I've become so much more invested in like local politics here too, because I'm like, if we can establish a strong foundation and framework of these really leftist progressive values here in like the city of Denver, then we can extrapolate them out to like the entire state of Colorado, as if we talk about means testing. So like, for example, voters here passed a tax increase, or it was actually a reduction of deductions available to households earning more than $300,000 in the state. And so like, and that money is being used to fund a free lunch program for all Colorado schools who are able to, who want to opt into it. And so, again, like we can see some of these things happening on the local level. It's just like, this is why we need like also like a federal functioning federal government so that like what's happening if I don't think any kid should be starved anywhere, But like, if one state is doing this, like Colorado, why can't we publicize it more to like the rest of the country and then use it as a model for a national program to get rid of hunger?
Yeah, 100%. Go ahead, Johnny.
Yeah, so Minnesota actually passed a bill guaranteeing free lunch for students, and it's not means tested. And who cares? If there's 5 rich kids who get a free meal, they probably might not like it. Who knows? Maybe they'll have their mommy pack them a lunch. But it's not about that. It's about making sure that any kid is free from the worry of, having an empty stomach for breakfast or lunch. Actually, it's meals. It's not free lunch. So I don't know. I mean, I was poor growing up. I can't remember a time when I didn't get free lunch. And, I went to many, many different schools, as my story has been told. I went to 10 different elementary schools, 3 different junior highs, 3 different high schools. And I usually compared them by the lunch program. The better the lunch program, the better the school was, it seemed. And, some of them, it was obvious, like you had to go get a ticket, and that ticket was your free lunch. So other kids knew. And, there was that shame thing going around with it. But the problem is, GOPers, they don't think people, even in this state, they don't think people are hungry. They don't think people need to be fed. I have yet to see a hungry child. This was what was coming out when this was getting passed, when the debate was going on. And it's really ridiculous. Like I said, I have my issues with all political parties, but the GOP is definitely one of the most blatant hypocritical, and they're all about family values, but they don't want to feed kids. They want to make you have a kid, but they don't want to help you take care of the kid. I mean, there's just so much hypocrisy, and it's all based off of typically this religio-political belief system that has been warped and twisted into their heads, and it's very difficult to have to deal with. I live in a community that's primarily that thinking, and even the Democrats are blue dog Democrats. They're conservative Democrats. So it's very conservative in my town. And I couldn't even imagine there being like a progressive chapter of anything coming out of here. Maybe like 3 of us getting together for a barbecue and, something. But, I have to give credit where it's due. The DFL party in Minnesota, they have the trifecta, and they're pushing things through. They finally legalized pot. They did this, deal for students, and they want to get reelected, is what I'm thinking.
Is that the Democrats' former Labor Party?
It's Democratic Farm and Labor.
Farm and Labor. Okay, I just want to make sure people know. Go ahead.
Yeah, DFL. The problem is that they have lost the Farm and Labor, and they aren't very democratic, because I also ran for Congress, and I don't see myself ever doing that again based on the experience that I had, at least not under this electoral system. And there's a lot, there's a lot you learn about people's integrity when you put yourself out there like that. And, you try to run a campaign with integrity, and you end up intermingling with people that you think you can trust that don't have the best intentions, right? So I think that happens a lot in politics, and it happens a lot in organizing and everything else. So, I mean, it's a mess.
I wanted to add to that child labor. That's another thing that the GOP, but some Democrats, they want to do that as well. That they want to use child labor for cheap labor in this country. And I would give the analogy of healthcare. You don't know, or health insurance, actually, to be more specific. You don't know how bad health insurance is until you go to use it. And you don't know how bad our democracy is when you go to try to run for office and you find out how all the different ways they have to block people who aren't part of the establishment. If you're just a regular citizen who don't know the ins and out, am I right, Johnny? That's probably when you found out all the different things.
Well, it's not even just the ins and outs. I mean, Minnesota basically runs its entire primary and electoral system kind of like the nation does for the presidency, right? So the delegates and all that, and there are people who end up becoming delegates by virtue of their position in the party, right? So you would call them super delegates in the state. And in my district, it went from 1,200 people. You have to go and you have to sit and you have to sit for like hours and sit at a table and fill out a piece of paper and say, I'm going to be a delegate. You don't just go in and vote and walk out. You have to commit to this. And I'm trying to tell people this is so not 21st century, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, that 1,200 people for the whole district in the first set of rounds gets whittled down to only 300 delegates, picking who the candidate will be for the entire district, right? So it's only 300 people. Now, and like I said, in our state, we could push it to a public primary, which you usually get about 10% of voters show up for. So you might get, well, one candidate would get maybe 10% of the vote. So, you know, it'd be more like, say, 20, 30% of the people would show up, you know, where you're getting 30,000 votes instead of 170,000 in the general, right? Is usually how they balance out for each candidate. But, you know, they run this system where it's not one person, one vote. It's a delegate system. What does that do? That purges votes at every step of the way. So now you're down to 300 people, half of which do this every election cycle, and they're going to do whatever their connections tell them to do.
So it's like having super delegates at that local level, like what they did to Bernie. All right, I'm going to go to Day. Yeah, I'm going to go to Day and then go to Kimberly next. Go ahead, Day.
Yeah, this is definitely one where I, like Johnny, I'm always like, we can't let the GOP get away with literal insanity just because the Democrats are inattentive and neglectful. Because I'm like, isn't it the same party that quotes, Jesus fed the hungry, he clothed the naked, all those things, we should be Christ-like, which I agree with. I mean, as a Christian, I agree. But then it's like, we don't do any of that in our actual day-to-day life. It's scary to me. But the food thing is a particular gripe for me because I think it's an issue where we're not even talking about the root cause. We're literally still debating whether or not kids should be able to eat at the place that they sit for 8 hours trying to learn. That shouldn't even be the conversation in 2023. We should be talking deeper because once we say that, okay, you guys actually deserve to eat now, then we should be talking. Then we have to look at, okay, who's feeding these kids? Where is the food being sourced from? Because then we're going to have a conversation about, should Kraft be the one funding a lot of the food? Should Coca-Cola and Pepsi and all these other companies be in the food? Because if you ask me, my question is no. And then that turns into a deeper conversation of why aren't we sourcing? Why aren't we partnering with these local farmers and other local small businesses so that we can feed these kids food that was sourced locally so that they can actually eat a nourishing meal, which most of them do not get. We could actually talk about what it's like to go out and farm and plant stuff in your school, pick it and eat it and cook it. And then more importantly, that then goes a little bit deeper because we've seen so much research that shows when children's diets have been changed to include less processed sugar, less fats and things that are not healthy, it helps their cognitive functioning, it helps their behavioral functioning, etc. But then that means we're going to start losing money for the pharmaceutical companies, for these big food companies, big agricultural companies, etc. And it's like, I get frustrated because I'm like, y'all, we are still talking about the part that's literally should be obvious.
Yeah, no, 100%. Kimberly. Before Kimberly goes, I just say that I wish I had a farming class when I was in high school or whatever, because I would love to have a vegetable garden in my backyard. I am failing. The players be dying. Poor players, I feel bad for them. But go ahead, Kimberly.
Yeah, I'm not great at gardening either. Everything dies for me too. But, again, I also find it funny when I hear stuff of like, we can't have universal free lunch or universal free college or things of that sort, because you got to think about the children of the rich, right? Do you want to pay for them, to get a benefit that they could pay for themselves privately? And I'm just like, this is an interesting stance, right? Because in every other scenario, you don't have a problem giving free money to the rich. I mean, these are people who would gladly, vote for a tax break for these folks. And yet you're telling me that your biggest issue with free college is that rich people are going to get something free? You've been giving them everything for free. What are you talking about? The rich people love free stuff. These are the biggest welfare queens in history. I mean, the current American elite today, all of their businesses are backed by the government. All of them. The big banks, I mean, without the government, these people wouldn't make profit. I mean, you have somebody like Elon Musk, right, getting a fan base of young men because he's so successful. Meanwhile, you look at all of his companies, and without the government, none of them would be profitable.
Yeah, 100%. Let me go back to Johnny.
Yeah. So on that point, and going to what Day is saying, is it's just like the military industrial complex. We need to think of it in that way. Even Medicare for all. Medicare for all is great to a start. It's a start. It's not the end. Why? Because what we're doing is using public money, right? Not taxpayer money. We're beyond that, right? We're using public money from the federal government to pay private contractors, pharmaceutical companies, medical device companies. Now, what we have to do is we have to get to the root of those and start nationalizing those. When we talk about food, food is not a right. Water is not a right. They are necessities. They trump rights. Okay. And Trump did not ruin that word. Thank you very much. They trump rights. Necessities are things that we must have to live. Shelter, which I include as clothing, as part of shelter, right? Because we live in cold places. You got to have a jacket to go outside. That's shelter. Okay. So food, clothing, shelter. And then we can take it a step further and say, in order to have a successful society, we also have to have education. That's number one in the extras. Okay. Because without education, we don't have doctors, engineers, any of those other, technical things that we may want in society to carry our society forward. We need engineers for infrastructure. We need doctors, nurses to take care of our people in our healthcare. So we invest in education as the first and foremost thing. After we have fed, clothed, gave people water, and gave them shelter, we educate them. And then we talk about, after we have the educated populace and the productive capacity to do so, we use those resources for healthcare and other things, and building our infrastructure and taking care of ourselves, making sure fires are put out, those types of things. And then all the rest is just extra. All this crap, I've talked about it before on the show, the crap you got in your closet that you bought because the system of consumerism convinced you that you just needed that thing. And
how about taking a sub to the bottom of the ocean or going to space?
Yeah. So, when it comes to things like these, like food, I take it all the way. Like I said, I'm a post-capitalist architect. So I'm taking this all the way back to the source, the original source. If we're talking about medical devices, if it's a for-profit company, and like you said about Elon Musk, they gets government contracts, right? It's public money that we're giving these people in order so that they can get rich because they're for-profit. They're not non-profit. They're not publicly owned or, nationalized companies or resources. So that's a definite thing that we have to consider whenever we talk about this transition into a more responsible way to manage our resources.
Yep, 100% all day. Let me see let me go to a day before we go to our sponsors. We're going to reveal a sponsor for the show, but let's go to day and then we go to our sponsor.
Yes. Well, first, to quote David, as he likes to say, nonprofit is just a tax status. But I also want to say that I think what we're all kind of getting to is a shift that we need culturally in America into what it means to invest in delayed gratification. We have created a society where everything is instant. We don't want to work out, so we'll get surgeries, we'll get pills, we'll do all the things that don't require the hard work. But we now we've recognized with short-term gratification, aka short-term profit maximization, we see what that's led to. It's been the fast food of American diet for centuries, and now look at what it's done. And we have to redirect ourselves back to having nourishing meals, quote unquote, investment for the long term, investment into education for our children. I know I support Marianne Williamson, but that's one thing a big reason why is because I believe in a Department of Children and Youth where we front load our children with resources, education, food, wraparound services, trauma education, etc., so that 10 years from now, said kids can go out and be productive members of society. We need to make sure that we invest in preventative care. That means working out, eating well, etc., clean air, clean water, so that 10 years from now, we're not paying billions of dollars in cancer treatment. We have to, that type of mentality, though, means you have to be willing to sacrifice in the middle. You have to be willing to go through the hard part. And a lot of us want to skip the hard part and get to the reward, and that's not how it works. And so we need politicians who are willing to make those unpopular decisions for good. We see them do them for bad. They could care less. Yeah. But people who are willing to say, I hear you, and we all want this, but right now, no, we can't go fund said war. We can't go do this thing because we need to invest in our children. No, we're not going to give Tesla another tax break. We're going to invest in everyone having a home. But that takes moral courage and that takes creativity. And that's two things that a lot of these politicians don't possess anymore.
100%. With that said, let's go to our sponsor, Call Me Limbo, who is our people, Day and David, their podcast. And I was listening to their last podcast and they were talking about infrastructure. They was talking about airports. And that's why I let that last This Is America talk about the derailment, because our infrastructure definitely needs upgrade in this country. And then the last video that we're going to go to before we end the show is going to also be about East Palestine. So I definitely enjoyed this Call Me Limbo. And whenever I need a fix of my man Day and my man David, I always go and check out their podcast. So I don't know if you guys want to jump in and say anything more before I move on.
Well, first off, thank you. We're getting ready to drop some more information, some more episodes soon, a little rebranding potentially. So I'm excited. Nice. I don't know. David is super creative. It's fun to chat about things we care about and come up with crazy ads to make people laugh if you listen to the show.
Yeah, definitely check them out. So I'm going to go straight to our last video.
And away from DC, because those lobbyists were the ones
who
pushed back on regulations. Does part of your overcorrection, will that involve pulling lobbyists off and away from DC, because those lobbyists were the ones who pushed back on regulations, and they, pressed lawmakers. They gave them money. They donated money to their campaigns. And there's been some pretty strident pushback on regulations on behalf of the rail industry. Are you going to stop that?
Ma'am, I fully understand that. I own this. Since day one, in the immediate aftermath, I was in East Palestine. I've been back almost every week since to get feedback from the community on what Norfolk Southern can do to help the community recover and help the community thrive. And I've been back to make sure to oversee our work. With respect to federal legislation, there are many provisions in the Railway Safety Act that we fully support, including enhanced take car standards, which the rail industry has been supporting for years.
Does part of your overcorrection...
All right, so here's Fox asking a good question, right? What the heck is going on in this world? Like, is it the Twilight Zone or something? What's going on? Are we in the Black Mirror? So I thought that question was excellent because it talked about what a lot of people were saying, how is the fault of the lobbyists of the train industry. There's only a few train companies in America, and they all, at first, they wanted this special braking system that was new, that would definitely help with what happened and end a lot of derailments. And once they saw how much it cost, they pulled back with their support for it because they knew it was going to cost billions. Even though they make billions of profit every year, it would probably be a small amount, a percentage of what they make in profit. And here is an excellent question, and I would encourage people to go to Case Study QB Twitter account, and you can see I have 5 different clips, and they were all very good questions of this woman. I have to say, she did an excellent job holding him accountable. He probably went to Fox thinking, oh, these are my people. They're going to ask me softball questions, and this was an excellent question. But one thing that I noticed was a theme was that he was not answering the questions at all, as you saw from that one. He might maybe answered a little bit towards the end, but it wasn't even an adequate no. He should have said, no, I'm not going to we're going to have our lobbyists stand down for the next year or two. He didn't say that. So it's going to be very interesting to see. Let me go to Day. What you think about this, buddy?
This is a perfect example where it shouldn't even be a question. It doesn't matter what Norfolk Southern wants to do. They don't have a say in the regulation. They don't have a say in whether or not we're blocking their lobbyists, because we are. You don't get to destroy and decimate an entire town and continuously do that, and we find out there's a record of things happening like this, and then we still want to bring you to the table like, well, we don't want to interrupt your profit too much, so how about Pretty Please and May the Mother May I, Simon Says, cut that crap. Like, I appreciate her for embarrassing him. It felt like watching a congressional hearing with Katie Porter, but
yeah,
at this point, I'm not interested in should we do these things. It's what have you all implemented since then? Do you guys still deserve to be in business? How much should we take before we nationalize you? Like, that's the point I'm at with these. And I hope these regulators are at that point as well. But come on now.
I would love to hear that question. Hey, should we nationalize you? Because you guys are not doing it. Go ahead, Kimberly.
Hello?
Revoke their corporate charter. That's what
Okay.
Holly Horn said. Revoke their charter. Go ahead, Kimberly.
Yeah, we should definitely nationalize them. I mean, we should be nationalizing a lot of stuff, but the railroad companies are definitely one of them. I would piggyback off of Day's point in the sense that I've never understood why we need to ask the super rich, what to do. Like, do we ask a murderer permission to send them to jail? Like,
Nope.
it seems to me that politicians in America have just bailed on the responsibility of being a politician, right? They don't even want to make decisions anymore. They want to talk to some rich person, right, who's going to make the decisions for them, which is why they all need permission to do anything for the same rich person they're supposed to be holding accountable. It just reminds me of, I don't know if you guys remember that time in the primaries when they were Bernie and a lot of the other candidates were talking about taxing billionaires like Bill Gates. And so Elizabeth Warren and Bernie as well had like quote tweeted a tweet from Bill Gates saying like, hey, I don't really understand this. What's going on? Like, this is too radical. Bernie's response was, listen, this is going to be your tax rate, and that's what it's going to be. Elizabeth Warren's response was, well, Bill Gates, I will personally meet with you to convince you on this policy. And then the question is, if this policy is supported by 70% of the population, why do you need to convince one billionaire to support this in order for you to go all out there? I mean, these people are basically giving away the game, which is you're electing a bunch of people, you're giving them power, and those people are basically rescinding that power to the private interests. This is the same thing with the new Netflix documentary with Obama. I mean, what does Obama say in that documentary? He's like, I'm the president, but I also wonder about these very rich folks and like, what do they do? And what are their thoughts because they control so much? And I'm just like, you are the president of the richest country in the history of the world. And you're thinking about the thoughts and ideas of a billionaire? Yep. Meaning he's putting a billionaire at the same power level as him. Who elected this damn billionaire for you to be taking advice from him? At least you got elected. You were a terrible president, right? But people did elect you. They're giving away the game about how this little democracy works, which is you can vote for whoever you want, but there's no policy that's ever going to come for you, right? Because all these people have essentially given all their political power to private actors whose faces you don't know.
No, 100%. And that brings me to a story that Chris Hedges talks about often. He said it at the last Workers Strike Back event that I was at. And he gives the story of how it was during the height of the Vietnam and Nixon was in office and they had to put school buses around the White House because they saw people were protesting. And Nixon was looking out the window talking to Henry Kissinger and said, hey, Henry, they're going to come for us. They're going to bust through the bus and the gates, and they're going to come for us. And that's how we need to have politicians. They need to be fair in us because right now they're thinking about the rich and what they want when they're not thinking about what the people want. So I want to thank y'all for coming and joining us on the show. As we end the show, I want to give a shout out to the Patreons, Nancy Venture, Pedro Hernandez, Deborah B, PJ Chris, Akibasha Kita, Zachary Guston, Day and David, our sponsors. Call Me Limbo. Definitely check them out. Check out that podcast today, right after this show. And I'm going to go around the horn and just tell the people, have my people give their farewells as we end the show. So I'm going to go to Dave first.
Thank you guys so much for watching us. It means a lot that people even care to engage with us. And yeah, check out Call Me Limbo.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me back. I am rarely caught off guard, I feel like, and you definitely threw a curveball. So thank you. That was really nice. When I was down at the Pride Festival earlier today, I was just reminded of the importance of community and being in community with one another. And if we can't do it physically, sometimes that feels dangerous or impossible. But like creating this digital space and digital community, I'm really appreciative of it, Case. So thank you for having me back.
Yeah, much appreciate you and my people on this panel. Let me go to Kimberly next.
Hello.
Yeah.
All right, I think I'm on now. Yeah, well, thank you for having me on. I always like giving my little takes. So, yeah thank you.
Yeah. Nah, definitely. I can't wait for you to run again. We're going to definitely support you, and hopefully you run through the mutual aid party. I talk to your volunteers people. We get that going. Much love to you. Go ahead, Johnny.
Yeah, man, it was good to come back, and yeah, let me know when you need some help with that mutual aid party stuff, and I'll help out with that and see what you got going on. But
I will be holding you to that. I will be. Thank you so much, everybody. Let me give a last shout out to everybody in the chat. PJ Holly Horn, Bad Cookies, Beefers in the building. The German was in the building. Joy to the world. Good to see you as well. Mastermind Hour. I don't know. Zachary Franklin, thanks for coming through. And there's so many people to name. I think Miguel H was there earlier. Pachico, I don't know. Hopefully I said your name right. But so many people to name. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, hanging out with us. Looking forward to seeing you. So I'm going, like, I don't know if you saw the beginning, but I'm going on vacation next week. So there's not going to be a lot of clips on the Twitter from Tuesday on to the following week. And but I'm going to be well rested, and I'm going to try to sneak a clip in or two. Don't tell my wife, like I said earlier. Don't tell my wife. I hope she's not watching now. She's not watching. All right. Much love to y'all. Have a great one. Adios. Hey. Work your strike back, baby. Strike it back. Adios.